Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into something that's honestly a bit of a hidden epidemic. We're talking about the silent ache of functional emptiness. Now, I'm not talking about the loud, dramatic kind of emptiness where your whole life is visibly falling apart. No way. We're looking at the quieter version. It's that feeling where, on the outside, your life looks absolutely fine, maybe even incredibly successful. But internally, it feels like something is just missing. It's a fascinating, deeply misunderstood phenomenon. So let's just jump right in and break it down together.
You know, there's this strange kind of emptiness that almost nobody actually talks about. Think about your everyday mechanical routine. You wake up, you go to work, you reply to emails, you pay the bills, you might even laugh at a joke with a friend. All your responsibilities are totally handled, and everyone keeps telling you how well you're doing. And yet right underneath all of that high-functioning behavior, there's this persistent, unexplained emotional flatness. It kind of feels like you're just participating in your own life, rather than actually feeling connected to it.
And here's the tricky part. Because there's no visible crisis, trying to explain this ache to anyone usually just leads to a wave of toxic positivity. You'll hear things like, "But your life seems so good," or "You should really be more grateful," or "Come on, other people have it so much worse," right? And man, that just breeds immense guilt. You start feeling deeply isolated because people assume you're perfectly fine just because your life looks fine. So on top of feeling completely disconnected, you end up feeling ashamed for even struggling in the first place.
So here's a massive takeaway, and I really hope this relieves some of that guilt for you. Gratitude and emptiness can absolutely exist at the exact same time. It is entirely possible to deeply, genuinely appreciate your life, to be super thankful for your health, your family, your stability, while still feeling totally emotionally disconnected from the whole shebang. Having a good life does not automatically guarantee emotional connection, period. This brings us to part 1 of our explainer, functioning versus fulfillment, and the paradox of the modern routine. To really understand this, we've got to look at the societal script we're all handed from a very young age. It goes a little something like this. Step 1, get good grades. Step 2, get hired. Step 3, be incredibly productive. Step 4, keep improving. Step 5, just keep moving. It's mechanical, right? Almost like a rhythm. We are so heavily conditioned to chase milestones and constantly optimize for external validation. But hey, notice what's literally entirely missing from this list? Nowhere in this script does society actually teach us how to emotionally exist. We spend years building these lives, achieving our goals, creating all this momentum, but we rarely hit pause to ask if the life we're building is actually making us feel alive.
And this right here is the big aha moment. We constantly confuse functioning with fulfillment. Functioning is all about maintaining routines, building up careers, and, forcing smiles. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is about experiencing real meaning, feeling genuine connection, and actually being present. A lot of folks mix these two up, but they are night and day. You can maintain a flawless outward appearance, literally functioning at the highest possible level, while completely lacking any internal authenticity. This emptiness doesn't come from a lack of success. It comes from a lack of emotional presence.
Psychology actually has a term for this exact thing. It's called the arrival fallacy. It's basically the psychological belief that true happiness is just permanently waiting for us on the other side of an achievement. You know the drill. I'll feel complete when I finally get that promotion, or I'll definitely be able to relax once I buy a house. So we hit our goals, we expect this profound wave of emotional relief, but instead, we're just met with that same internal hollowness. Because at the end of the day, internal emptiness simply cannot be solved by an external achievement. Which leads us straight to this incredibly unsettling question. It's a total hard pivot. Why don't I feel different? This is the exact terrifying moment your nervous system realizes there's a massive disconnect. You finally arrived at the destination you worked years for, and that emotional resolution you were promised, it totally ghosted you. And it's scary, right? Because if success doesn't fix the feeling, what on earth will? That moves us into part 2, survival mode, and what happens when the brain mutes joy. A huge portion of emotionally empty people have basically spent years living in an invisible emotional survival mode. They're driven by these completely unseen forces, keeping absolutely everyone happy, avoiding failure at all costs, trying to stay emotionally safe, and feeling like they have to literally earn love through their achievements. When your brain gets hyper-focused on performance and protection like that, it actually alters your nervous system. It starts prioritizing pure efficiency over actual lived presence. You effectively stop experiencing life and you just start managing it.
Now, there's a really massive misconception out there about emotional numbing. The shutdown doesn't only block the bad stuff, it blocks joy too. A lot of people assume that feeling numb just means feeling nothing. But psychologically speaking, numbness is actually what happens when you felt way too much for way too long without properly processing any of it. Your overwhelmed nervous system literally shuts down emotional intensity just to survive the pressure cooker. That's exactly why you can pull off something huge or sit at dinner with people you deeply love and still feel strangely muted and absent.
We see this a lot with folks who experience what psychologists call emotional neglect. Now, to be clear, this isn't necessarily abuse. We're talking about environments where all your practical needs were met. You had a good childhood, food on the table, a roof over your head, but your internal emotional world was rarely ever acknowledged. No one really taught you how to identify your feelings or how to be safely vulnerable. So what did you do? You adapted. You learned to become highly functional, super capable, fiercely independent. But you remained chronically disconnected from your own feelings, which creates the absolute perfect blueprint for functional emptiness later in life.
All right, let's get into part 3, the treatment and how we start reconnecting beyond just our performance.
When that feeling of emptiness starts creeping in, a terrified brain usually tries to do the exact opposite of what it actually needs. It completely distracts itself. We throw ourselves into more work, endless scrolling, more stimulation, more background noise, and even more goals. Why? Well, because slowing down means we'd have to actually confront the absolute, agonizing discomfort of our own disconnection. We double down on all the functioning just to avoid facing the lack of fulfillment. But as you can probably guess, you just can't endlessly suppress your emotional needs without it eventually catching up to you.
The good news is, healing doesn't require you to blow up your life or make some dramatic, sweeping changes overnight. It actually starts with simple awareness and asking yourself some pretty difficult identity unraveling questions. Things like, what actually makes me feel emotionally alive? When was the last time I was fully, truly present? And who am I outside of my productivity and everyone else's expectations? I know they sound simple, but if you've built your entire self-worth around what you achieve, these questions are incredibly confronting. They force you to finally step out from behind the performance.
And that brings us to the most essential shift of all. So many people experiencing this emptiness secretly believe their value is entirely based on what they provide. Being helpful, being successful, being the reliable one, they accidentally turn into performers in their own lives. But human worth was never, ever supposed to depend on your usefulness. It has to shift back to who you actually are, being authentic, being vulnerable, and being present. Your authentic, emotional self really, truly matters.
As you start to do the work to heal and reconnect, it's so important to remember this. Real fulfillment is usually a lot quieter than people expect. Overcoming emptiness doesn't mean you just abandon all your responsibilities to chase constant adrenaline-fueled excitement. Real fulfillment is just emotional honesty. It's cultivating meaningful relationships. It's feeling psychologically safe enough to actually exist as yourself, to rest emotionally without feeling the need to put on a show. It's quiet for sure, but man, it is deeply profound.
So, to summarize our main takeaway from today's explainer, emptiness is not a sign that you failed at life. It absolutely doesn't mean everything is permanently broken. This feeling simply means that you've spent way too long living away from yourself while trying to build the perfect, socially acceptable life. It's basically just an alarm bell from your nervous system, politely asking you to finally come back home to your own emotions. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. If you've been carrying around this quiet, unexplained emptiness, I really want you to shift your mindset. Stop treating yourself like you're a problem that needs to achieve more just to deserve some peace. Stop trying to outrun the emptiness. Instead, sit with it and ask yourself this one question. What parts of myself have I abandoned while trying so hard to become okay? Really listen to the answer. It might just change everything. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.